Welcome, everybody, to the Therapist Take podcast. We are going to talk about lust today, so don't go anywhere. Hey, Carrie.
Hey, Josh.
How are you today?
I'm all right.
You laugh at me because we're dancing
You were
to the
dancing
music
a little bit, yeah.
that we can't hear.
You were really doing like the dad, like head dance, you know?
That's all I can do.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you don't want to see anymore. You just want it from the neck up, trust
Oh,
me.
okay.
It's the best I got.
It was a way to protect me.
Yeah,
that-
it's not just you, trust me.
Everyone?
Everybody, yes, yeah, neck
Okay.
up.
Okay.
And if I could learn the hand thing they used to do in the 80s, I
Oh,
would
yeah,
do
the
that.
Vogue? Yeah.
Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
Man, I would totally do
Striker
that.
pose.
That's great. That's a good one. Well, we have quite the episode today.
Yes, we do.
And we did just a quick run through. So,
Very quick.
we probably didn't do it justice on our
Probably
prep
not.
work because it's quite the episode. And,
Well, yeah.
and when this was, we're supposed to have Holly Shockley on, and then she woke up this morning and with a sick kid. And so, of course, I'm like, no, don't worry about it. We'll reschedule. So we'll get that rescheduled where we're going to talk about being tech intentional family. We're a tech intentional person. So we have this whole great episode laid out with her. And so then I was like, okay, I gotta get something else going. And then I was on my email and I saw that Alexandra Katehakis on her, I subscribed to her.
Mirror of Intimacy.
Yeah, do you get those too?
Yes.
Yeah. And today's topic was lust. And I was like, what a great one. That comes up all the time in session for us. So,
Yeah.
and then I was like, that'll be easy to talk about. Then as I got into it, I'm like, oh man.
Oh, no.
So we'll see how this goes, I guess.
Okay.
We'll see how.
I love starting off something like,
Yeah, I know.
We'll
I
see
know,
how it
yeah.
goes. Well,
Okay,
let's talk about this.
yeah.
Are we avoiding this topic because we realize how sticky
Yeah,
it
no,
is?
I
a
mean
little?
it's a great topic. It's much more complicated, and that's why I think we need to talk about it because it is much more complicated than people give it credit for. When people come into sessions talking about lust, it's one of those concepts that people often just assume you're operating under the same definition that they're
That is true.
right,
Yeah.
and it's actually quite ambiguous, I think. In and of itself, and lust means something to different people. But even when you ask people to define it for themselves, it seems to come out ambiguous. It's not really something they've thought about. It's just
I think ambiguous, but I think too that it's really hard to put words to it. I think a lot of times it's something that they feel, or it's this amalgamous group of wrong, bad, dangerous, and giving people language
Right.
and start exploring that then it becomes, like you're saying,
well,
quite a process.
I think because it's or maybe because it's ambiguous by nature, like in a sense, because like when we think about all the feelings, like in trying to put words to describe feelings, our feelings are all happening inside of us, right? But you can't, like, if I say I love you and this is what love means to me, I can also demonstrate what love means to me. But I don't know, like, if lust can be demonstrated. I think it becomes something else at that point. Like
Yeah.
it becomes, it becomes, like, in the sexual sense, it becomes sex, or it becomes a part of love, or it becomes a part of intimacy, or something else. Like I kind of wonder, like, by its nature, it's a word that's describing this kind of maybe a transitionary point of not of not being in a state of desire, entering into a state of desire, and then a desire playing itself out.
So like an internal process.
Yeah, like do you ever hear somebody talking about lust in the sense of that has some kind of action attached to it? And the most I would hear this is with pornography. Maybe they're saying I have a problem with lust, but most people will say I have a problem with porn. You know what I mean? Like, they don't usually say lust at that point. It's
They've
the
shifted
leading
it
up to
what
it.
they're right. and
So,
what
like,
they
when
do.
they're setting their boundaries and stuff, and like trying to set the stage for it to be successful in their recovery, then they start saying, I found myself lusting,
Yes.
but I didn't act on anything.
Right. Right.
right? You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of, it's just a really
It's
ambiguous
yeah.
concept, I feel like. So
To me, that's why we're talking about
that's
it.
why I think it's why it's good to talk
Okay.
about. So all right, so let me just do the episode breakdown
Okay.
and then cover the housekeeping things, and then we'll jump right into it. So um, the episode breakdown, we're going to start out talking about the psychological conflict of lust, which we already started to get into a little bit, and then we're going to move in to how a journey toward personal power, how that plays into all this as well. So the quest for power, and then we're going to talk about the conflict of religion and religious influence and biology. And then to kind of close it out, to round it all out, we're going to see if is it possible that um, our desires can align with our values. And so that's where we'll wrap up with today.
Okay.
So before we jump into that, just want to remind everybody to do all the typical housekeeping things. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. It really helps to please the algorithm so other people can get this information. And then don't forget to ring the alert bells and maybe even like the episode if it's something that you found yourself watching for more than 3 minutes. You know, but if you're listening to this on the podcast platforms, please just take a second and stop what you're doing and just go and give us that 5-star review. Write us something nice if you feel like you can do that. And then head on over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And so um, I think that I always forget, like feel like there's something else in there that I forget to tell people, but I think that basically covers it.
That
So
covers it,
yeah.
from what I know.
Okay, so let's start out. Let's talk about this idea of lust as a psychological conflict, and to kind of get us started, I just want to kind of read people just a section of what came through today on the email that kind of inspired this.
Okay.
And this is from Alexandra Katehakis, who is a founder of the Center for Healthy Sex in Los Angeles. And she has published a book where it has all these daily reflections, so one per day. And so you can actually purchase this book. It's called Mirror of Intimacy, and I'll put a link to that in the description. And that is the thing I forgot to say. We have tried to put several links in the description of the video or in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast platforms. And I would encourage you to go check those out because there's a link to her book and and then also their social media is actually pretty good. Like they put out some really good content, so
Yes.
I'd check that out too. Okay, so let's. This is just a section of what she said, and she said, "Lust inflames a part of the body that feels like a refuge. Sometimes, it's one place where we are totally alone, where no one can get at us." So it's a place where it feels like we have personal power. Surrendering to lust is unconsciously based on the desire to reclaim a sense of personal power. But sadly, it's a desire which rarely matches up with our own values. The profound privacy of this conflict is one of the reasons we experience a split between our desires and our values as externally imposed, as a feeling of being unfairly judged by foreign morals. In truth, when you peel away the layers, the clash between our lustful choices and our own ideals is deeply internal to us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
She doesn't provide like guidance for that, really, right? As much as she's saying, let's explore it.
one thing I would say too with this is that this is this is fitting to the concept because when you read some of her other stuff, it's not as ambiguous. Like this is actually like she's leaving it up
Yeah.
to the reader
That's
to
right.
kind of figure out what she's saying
That's
right here, right?
It's provocative. It's
yeah,
supposed to be a
100%.
reflection and a meditation and exploration, right?
Yeah. And I would say almost every entry she does will do that, but this one
Yes.
is especially. So this one
Especially.
actually I had to sit down and think, what is she saying?
Take it word by word,
Exactly.
really.
Yeah. So I thought maybe we could unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
And kind of explore some of the, just some of the language that she's using in here on that. So first of all, like I haven't really thought about this idea. It's one place where we are totally alone, where no one can get at us, and it almost sounds like a place we don't want to be. But then did she say the word refuge in here? I don't
Yes.
know. That was the word that's coming to my mind. I don't know if she.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said that before. It
So
feels like
yeah.
a refuge
Yeah.
sometimes. So, um, but I was thinking about it like, um, maybe that's one of the, valuable, kind of the valuable functioning of having a sexuality, like having this phenomenon that we call lust or we call desire, that kind of drowns out the world around you and creates just a sense of safety or a sense of peace or
Sure.
contentment or whatever.
Yeah, no, and I think that's part of why she points out in there around it being kind of unconscious. I mean, I think you can see that while lust may give you a descriptor of the content, what this is really about is the imagination, right? And our imagination becomes a great moderator of our mood and of our stress, right? And that's where fantasy becomes, right? Starts to build, right? In our imagination and fantasy, and lust becomes maybe part of that. And I do think that bringing up the unconscious, meaning that, even kids on the playground are involved in a world of imagination, and it's moderating their stress, and in their mind they're able to be something, right? They're free of those other things and
Right.
able to be something, and that lust is an extension of that,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it is a private place, and because culture has taught us about the goodness and or badness around sexuality, it will probably reinforce itself as continuing to stay private.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about the how it relates to power,
Okay.
which is something I think we can talk about quite a bit with
I
what we do
know.
for a living.
It's kind of
So,
more of like, how do we narrow it
right.
down for this?
So let me just read the quote I have here by Esther Perel to kind of start us off here. And again, the quote that I read from Alexandra Katehakis is really kind of serving as an umbrella to the rest of what we're talking about. So Esther Perel says, "Lust is about wanting. It's that part of desire that's rooted in mystery, the unknown, the thrill of anticipation, and the yearning for something beyond reach." I think I mean we've in the work that we do as betrayal trauma therapists, we're uh, constantly addressing lust as kind of this maladaptive form of coping, but we have talked about it in the sense of striving to regain some sense of control or some sense of power, So how do you understand it in terms of like how lust is connected with a journey or a quest for power?
Well, I think that it's a lot about that in that quiet, you know, private space of lust. That's a place you get to feel powerful. That's a place where you're reaching for and pursuing something, and what you want is completely acceptable because it's your world, which
Right.
is isn't that what
As long as
how
nobody knows.
as long as nobody knows, right? But that's power, right? That's the
Yeah,
ultimate. I can do
100%.
whatever I want.
Yeah.
No obstacles, no restraints, and no guilt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally.
In the
Well, that's
imagination
where
world.
where she is talking about this external um, influence of morality, basically. I haven't talked to her about this. I actually did text her this morning asking her if it was okay if I could do this.
Alexandra Katehakis, not Esther Perel.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Um, if I could read this directly, because I didn't want to overstep there. But I don't know exactly what her understanding of lust is in terms of like, or how people are built. If we are built with a moral compass built inside of us, or if it's an influence from the world around us, whether it's religion or other things,
Larger culture,
Yeah.
family. Yeah.
But I think from how she wrote this, anyways, it seems like it's implying that there's this natural thing that happens to us, and it gets in conflict with the an external, like a foreign, as she says it, a sense of morality. So I feel this, I desire this, but then I feel things like guilt and shame because I'm not supposed to feel this or desire this. I'm not supposed to, and that creates that
I'm not supposed to,
conflict.
like Esther saying, want to that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the yearning for something beyond reach. I can't have this.
Right, right.
And by the way, I'm not suggesting at all that that it shouldn't be regulated. But I
Yeah.
do think, like, and I think you would probably agree that one thing that we do as people is that we tend to build walls around our walls, and then, the instead of the one wall being our threshold for whatever is determined to be immoral, it's like, it's the third or fourth layer of wall that you built, and then if I cross that threshold, that's immoral. But really that wall was to protect you from crossing that wall, which was to protect you from
Protect from
crossing
that
that
one.
wall, which is to protect you from crossing the other wall that's going to lead you to a violation of
Values.
your values, and usually values are built around a perception of something that isn't real helpful. And I would say unregulated, anything within us really that we just kind of let
Leave
go and leave
unregulated, yeah.
unregulated is probably not helpful, because I think it was Viktor Frankl that wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and I think it's in that book where he said that the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast should be complemented with a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. It's a paradox, though,
Everything's a
right?
paradox.
Because the only way to really be free is to have those freedoms regulated. So I don't think for a second she would even come close to saying that we should just have unregulated sexual freedom. But we do need to deal with the conflict that's created, I think. I think.
So
That's how I read it anyways. So
do you think that Esther Perel's quote here is about acknowledging the power dynamic in our experiences of lust, or like what do you think what's kind of her take regarding power?
well, to be honest with you, I haven't read this article in its entirety to know the context it came in. I think
Sure.
the reason why I put it in here as kind of a segue into this point is just because it's just that part, where it's about wanting, how it ends with saying the yearning for something that's beyond reach. And I'm thinking about people that we've worked with that, they're that have whether they're a full-fledged sex addict or they're dealing with sex as a form of maladaptive coping and they're committing affairs. It's like they're after something they can't get. I don't necessarily think that they're using their sexual desire to get there. I think they're using the sexual desire to help them deal with the the difficult feelings that arise as they're on that journey.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Yeah.
But the way I've always described it to people I've worked with is it's like they're often very successful professionally. They're high achievers. Sometimes they have multiple degrees, or they're CEOs, doctors, lawyers, and not that someone who hasn't achieved to that degree can't be have affairs or be a sex addict, but we do see that a lot, and I point out to them is like it's almost like you got to keep moving, like you're running from something, but you're not running toward anything. So you're just running from something, and you'll grab a degree here and grab a degree there, and achieve this here and achieve this there, but you're just trying
Still running.
to run to put distance between you and whatever is chasing you. Do you remember me talking about how I related it to like the Godfather? I called it the Godfather effect, where
Yes.
people that have been really hurt or dealing with some level of trauma, whether it's through physical abuse or neglect or tragedy. Something happens in them where they just like, I just want to be untouchable. And how do I do that? Well, as like kind of like we saw in the movie The Godfather, I need to first gain status, so I need to become somebody, and then with that, I'm able to acquire money. I can feel some level of power with status and money, but how do I feel untouchable? Well, I need to be able to hurt someone and get away with it. and how that relates to sex or compulsive sexuality is, the hurting is is really the fantasy. It's like what this person that I'm sleeping with is, they're beneath me. I have dominion over them. And then what I always talk about is the family gets caught in the crossfire, which the reality is that you're not in that level of control ever, as we see with in the movie The Godfather. Remember on the movie poster, it's a marionette, right? And one of the most famous lines from that movie, in my opinion, is from the third movie where he says, "Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in." It's like really reflecting on this idea that I've not been a godfather at all. I'm more of a puppet than anything. So it's just this constant effort to try to cut those strings and just be
Free.
be a real boy. That was kind of a long-winded answer
Yeah.
to
No,
your question.
it's a great answer. Yeah, and I think I really like how you went down that note and illustrated that what we often think about as this path of destruction, right? It's tethered to this
Yeah.
belief that that's how you can get, if I have power, then I am free and safe.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the word lust, when you hear it, don't you think that it's got, at its core, it's embedded in shame? Does it not feel that way? Like,
Yeah,
aren't we
yeah.
talking about sexual desire? But that doesn't sound shameful.
Yeah, I
But
know.
lust
But lust
sounds,
does, it sounds wrong and shameful
yeah,
and how dare you and you shouldn't.
right.
And all those things come, even when you hear the word lust, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
see kind of,
Yeah,
shouldn't be thinking about that. And,
yeah.
right.
But it's just the same as, I mean, unless I'm saying again, this is where the ambiguity comes in. Somebody could be defining it completely different. But to me, we're talking about sexual desire most of the time, and so um, I think most rational people will say that that's okay to have, because how else was anybody going to be attracted to anybody
Sure.
in that sense?
Right.
I mean, when I've worked with young couples that have decided to um, wait till they get married to have sex, for example, I tell them, like, well, don't misconstrue your struggle with wanting to have sex as being some kind of character flaw. Like, you should, if this person you're going to spend your life with, you should desire them sexually, and then if you're not going to have sex, that should be difficult,
Sure.
right?
Right.
I'm not saying people are not responsible
No,
for it,
no.
but
We're bringing up psychological
sure,
constructs and ideas to
yeah,
like we were mentioning
right,
Alex's thing, to get you thinking, right? It's supposed to provoke some
yeah,
maybe internal conflict. It's not about a
sure,
right or wrong or a here's the path. That's
yeah,
not what today is going to offer,
yeah,
because we didn't pick.
sure.
Should you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep? Right? we picked lust.
That would be a lot easier.
That would be right.
That'd be a very short
The
episode.
podcast,
Yes.
yes. Find a comfortable pillow, make it cold and dark, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we'd have to. That's what we'd have to debate on. Like, we're gonna
What
our
temperature?
our forward discussion topic's gonna be what pillow you should get,
Yes.
how your temperature should be.
Yes, that's it. It's not a debate of should you.
Right,
Right.
right.
This is a hairy concept.
Yeah. No question. It does make me think, like to try to illustrate with the brain, like your desire, the desire to live, the desire to survive is strong and powerful. And
Yes.
if you're thinking about this from an evolutionary perspective, that part of your brain has been there a lot longer, and it's looking up at the way I say it. It looks up at the part of your brain that's the critical thinking part. The neocortex.
The newer part.
Right. It's going like looking up. So who do you think you are?
I've been here a long
You
time.
just showed up. You just got here.
Right.
I've been
Sure.
here way longer than you have. And so, do you remember like maybe some of the old war movies, like, or Band of Brothers? I think illustrated this, like when, you're in war and you've been fighting a war, and some 20-something
Yep.
kid shows up that went to college and
Gets to be
comes in as an officer,
Yeah.
and they're basically your boss, and they haven't seen war. Who does this person think they are?
Right.
Right. And that's
Right.
kind of how I feel like I see the
New part of the brain.
the midbrain,
frontal
the limbic brain operating, like looking up at the neocortex, going, really? Like, you're just going to show up and like tell me I can't do this? Like, who do you think you are?
But I think
You know?
you know, giving that illustration, and even, you know, Freud talked a lot about the life instinct, right? And he talked a lot about sexuality,
Yeah.
right? And so you can say what you want about some of his ideas. What he was really bringing forward was this is pretty foundational to the human
Yeah. Oh,
experience,
yeah.
right? Lust is
Yeah. We kind of
pretty
come full
foundational.
circle with Freud, haven't
Well,
we?
we did.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the conflict with religion and biology. There's a lot of religions in this world. I picked three texts to focus on. And so I'm just going to read these two real quickly, and we can put this on the screen. So I'm going to read it for anybody listening to this on the audio platform. I picked the Christian Bible, the Quran, and then this Hindu text. So in the Christian Bible, in Matthew 5, uh, the text says, "But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And then the Quran says, "And do not approach unlawful sexual intercourse. Indeed, it is ever an immorality and is evil as a way." And then the Hindu text says, "It is lust alone, born of contact with the material mode of passion, later transformed into wrath, which is the all devouring sinful enemy of this world." Wow.
Yeah, pretty profound.
Look out.
Right.
But that's just three. And from my understanding, a lot of major religions are going to address lust in this way. And I was just kind of wondering, why do you think that is? Like, how? And let's talk about it like from a secular point of view. Like,
Okay.
so I know that from a spiritual point of view, you say, well, because God understands the nature of lust, you know, and but if from a secular point of view, how did we come to these conclusions that we need to address this natural thing that happens with us that gets us in trouble? Maybe.
I think that's what it is. I think it's I mean, you and I all day are working with people that are dealing with the consequences,
Right.
right? Of lust, you know, maybe I don't even know if you'd use the word extreme, right? But the consequences, the costs, it's cost people relationships. It's hurt other people. It's become to a point of injury and risking your own health or your well-being. And so I think that when you're looking at it from a secular, you know, I guess I would even say, you know, scientific point of view,
Scientific. Yeah.
is to be able to say, okay, well, here's where it became problematic. Here are the symptoms of this cluster of issues.
Right. Well, one thing that sets us apart from the animal kingdom is that neocortex that we talked about, and is that sense of awareness that we have. And the way I've always said it is, to me, it's not like all animals aren't aware. They're aware to various degrees, but I think what's different about us is that we are keenly aware of our suffering in ways that other species are not.
Okay.
And that, I think, is one thing that makes us human. I also think it's for another episode that creates a lot of problems for us, because that means that we're just trying not to suffer
Not
at
to
all,
suffer, yeah.
right? And we know some suffering is good to some degree, right? So,
Yeah. Yes.
now, I do want to talk about real quick before we leave that topic. You know, having that moral compass is there to help us regulate, I think, you know, and so. But has it ever, or do you see it kind of over regulating, like doing more than what it was intended to do, which means now we're going back to now sometimes it creates more harm.
Well, I see probably just as many clients that are struggling with low desire, no desire, that have, when you ask what are your fantasies, that they stare blankly back, that feel icky at this idea. I have just as many of those clients as I have the ones that are on the high end of lust, and lust has taken over and they've acted outside of their values, right? So,
Right.
yes, of course, I think, you know, the world is on a continuum, right? And problems tend to lie in
Yeah.
both places.
Yeah, I agree. I think I thought it was Ken Adams that said this, and I brought this up to him one day, and he's like, I don't remember saying that.
Oh, okay.
So in my mind, it was Ken Adams that said this, but I don't know, I guess, who really said this. But he said that the mentality of sex is dirty, sex is bad, save it for someone you love, is something that is kind of universal to our culture. You know, like everybody's experiencing that to some degree, and that's something I would agree with. That um, you know, as we do as humans, and we respond to our fear of something, we fearmonger. You know, it's like, so how am I going to keep the next generation from getting hurt by this thing that maybe hurt me or hurt somebody I know or whatever?
Sure.
Is just tell them it's bad. You know, it's bad. But since it's a natural, it's a thing that we need to procreate. I also gotta say, so just don't do it. Just save it for someone you love. It's a completely
Yeah.
catch 22
bonkers.
there,
Yeah.
right? Like, what?
What?
Save the bad thing for the person I
For
love?
love?
Okay.
What a bind, right?
And how many people have we worked with, especially women, that have come in and they have saved themselves their entire life for that one person, and then they go to be with that person, and they can't make it happen
Right.
because the brain doesn't just switch like that. It's
Right.
not a light switch that says now it's good.
Yeah.
Now it's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. And
Yeah.
and
The
that's
way I always say it is kind of expanding on your memory of Ken's statement, which is, sex is wrong, sex is bad, don't do it. Oh, now you're married, right? Now do
Right.
it, enjoy it, and be good at it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I like that part. Yeah. Enjoy it and be good at it.
right? I mean, and you can just hear the
Yeah.
exact from one extreme to the next, right?
Yeah.
And so then lust, what's the role of lust in when we make lust bad, it's about repression, it's about holding it back, right? And when now it's sanctioned, right? Now we take our foot off of that brake, but lust is still bad, right?
Right.
So I
Yeah,
can't bring that into now, even the permitted space here.
Yeah. Right. 100%. So I do think like anything on its extremes usually is bad. You know, usually not gonna
Not
not
where
gonna
you
be
want to
very
be,
helpful.
not very healthy. Well, that kind of ties into this idea of your values, right?
Yeah. So let's transition into that. So yeah, and this is attributed to Oscar Wilde. I actually think there's a quote similar to this in this. Did he write The Picture of Dorian Gray? Is that Oscar Wilde? I think I can't remember, but
I mean, I don't know. Now that you've said them
I did
together.
read that book, and I do think a version of this quote is in there.
Okay.
But he says, the only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it, to resist it, and your soul grows sick and longing for the things it has forbidden to itself. The reason why I remember this being in that book is because, one, I've heard it before, and I was like, oh, like that's where it comes from, I guess. But I read this back when I was in grad school, and I really was bothered by it. Like,
Okay.
I know when we just read this, like you took it differently to say that he's actually saying to resist it. But when I first read it all those years ago, I was like, wait, that can't be right. The only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. Like, what about willpower and
Right. Sure.
right and like just you're supposed to just throw caution to the wind, I guess, and
Be a hedonist.
right, yeah.
If you
So
want anything,
I was
do
really kind of
anything.
bothered by it, and I was like, I had to completely disagree with that, and then moved on.
Okay.
But I have, but I don't. I mean, I don't know what it's Oscar Wilde. I don't know what he's really trying to say,
Right.
but I do think that
What if yield just means pause? Right?
yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Like I think maybe I was not understanding the paradox that he's creating because I'm a big, you know how I am with
I
that.
know,
I'm
I
a
do.
big believer in mental health and relational health being found in paradoxes. So,
Yeah.
so
'Cause
tell
he
me what you
didn't-
mean.
He didn't say the only way to deal with temptation is to completely dive in head first.
Right.
Perhaps the word yield, like I always think of yield signs mean what?
A pause,
Slow
yeah.
down, look around, be cautious.
Right.
Increase your awareness. And so, I think we could all identify this very easily with food, right? The more you tell yourself food is bad, and create a hate relationship, then when you want it, you must hate yourself. Right? If we yield and we say, those foods aren't as good for me, or
Mm-hmm.
those are, as they tell kids, sometimes foods, right? You're asking people to yield, slow down, be cautious, go slow, be thoughtful,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather than putting things into a binary, right? It's either,
Mm-hmm.
don't, if there's anything going on, give in, give in,
Yeah.
give in. And they're also not saying, oh, there's something you want that's bad,
Right.
resist, resist, white
Right.
knuckle, right?
Right. So instead of like hitting the brakes or hitting the gas,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Take your foot off.
right. It's just let's pause and what does that do? Like get your bearings.
Mm-hmm.
Try to understand what it is you're up against so
Sure.
that you can make a decision about what it is and what it isn't,
Right.
and that's something like I think going back to the ambiguity of like sexuality, some sexual things, like I think for a lot of young couples especially, and maybe even older couples, uh, pornography is a ambiguous thing, and particularly where it begins. That I think most people at some point, everybody's going to say that's porn. But where does it begin? It would be different for each person,
Sure.
and um, and so being able to have a conversation, especially younger people or people getting into new relationships with their partner about what it is and what it isn't is really important to
Mm-hmm.
do instead of just going, well, I'm not having that conversation, just like,
Right.
and just assuming that, you know, that my partner believes exactly what I believe about it, or I'm assuming they believe even worse things about it or something
Mm-hmm.
like that,
Mm-hmm.
or they're more rigid or whatever,
Right. Right.
to kind of slow it down a little bit and say, look, let's not let this make this thing such a terrifying thing,
Mm-hmm.
and let's have a conversation about this phenomenon that's
Right.
happening,
Right.
especially in our culture today with porn being such a big phenomenon.
Yes.
But sex and sexuality has been around since the beginning of human existence, animal existence,
Right.
whatever.
It's essential.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I also think that this quote, if you are someone who, I have lots of people that say, I have an addictive personality, or I'm extreme, I'm an
Mm-hmm.
all or nothing person. Sometimes you could read something like this and think, okay, so of course they're saying the answer is moderation, right? And to be honest with you, not everything can be moderated. The
Yeah.
idea here instead is not about moderation, right? About the amount or the degree of consumption. It's
Mm-hmm.
about being thoughtful. It's about
Mm-hmm.
critical thinking. I think that's what the
100%.
yield,
Yeah.
the slow down is
Mm-hmm.
about, right? When we think about lusts and desires, it's not about,
Mm-hmm.
giving in or, knots are
Mm-hmm.
coming. It's about what are they?
Mm-hmm.
Taking your values, any religious
Yeah.
beliefs or contexts, familial, and putting it through that kind of lens to explore it,
Right.
and go do that slowly and thoughtfully, and
Mm-hmm.
then think about how that fits
Right.
for you or doesn't, or even just what mysteries do you
Mm-hmm.
continue to wrestle with,
Yeah.
and just in general, we really don't like to hold on to things that we're not
Mm-hmm.
sure about. We really don't like saying, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Right.
oh, I feel this way about it, and I feel the exact opposite of it.
Mm-hmm.
We really try to make, just
Mm-hmm.
human beings, we really try to make complex things into simple.
Yeah.
And this
Oh,
is not this
gosh,
is not
100%.
something
Mm-hmm.
that's just not really gonna work once your brain is, especially once you have an adult brain,
Yeah.
right? And
It's very
you actually have the anatomy to critically think.
right. And so that leaves you asking questions like, why do I have to feel this way about this thing?
Right.
Like why?
Right. Great
And
example.
like because shame will keep you from asking these questions. Like
Yes.
I always think of like the movies where someone has an out of body experience, and they're seeing themselves from a different point of view,
Yeah.
and then their ghostly version of them kind of gets right up next to themselves. They're kind of just looking at their own skin and their own face, and like just first time for them to ever see themselves like this, right? And it's kind of how I try to, like, for example, working with somebody who's battling porn addiction. I was like, imagine yourself like in a three-piece suit, like dressed to the nines, you're buttoned all the way up, there's, you're dressing up, not dressing down, and but you're in front of that computer screen surfing the same content, but this time you're genuinely curious about why do I do this? Like, what is it about what's happening right here on the screen that is so compelling to the version of me that is sitting here with no clothes on, and and engaging in that behavior with it, like to really take that curious,
Yes.
out of body type approach with it, um, because I think that's kind of what you're describing a little bit, is to pause and look and examine and ask questions, and you still might come to the same conclusion on things.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You say, I think this is the right feeling to have with us.
Yeah.
But I haven't really stepped back and asked the question, like, why must I feel this
I
way
love
about
that.
this thing?
Yeah, the must is the
Yeah.
key. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because for some reason your brain thinks you have to feel this way about this. And again, you might come to that same conclusion, but
Sure,
maybe
but
not.
at least now you know where it's coming from, and
Yeah.
at least now it's yours, and it's not prescribed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one for me is like, why do I have to be afraid to talk about certain things? Now maybe I should. Maybe I should
Yeah.
shut my mouth from time to time. I saw a meme that said some people that are wearing lipstick should be wearing glue stick. I was like, that's me sometimes. I don't wear lipstick, but I probably should have some glue stick.
Just pull that out of your
handy.
pocket next podcast.
Of course, my mind is going, well, that ain't going to do the trick.
I can talk through that.
The glue stick ain't going to, let's just lick my lips. It tastes good.
Oh,
No,
that's
I was
funny.
kidding. I wasn't a glue
Don't be a glue eater.
I wasn't a
That's
glue
my
eater.
rule,
Right. But again, to that point, that doesn't mean that you don't come to the same conclusion, but at least you're willing to ask the
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Especially, but that helps you like dive into like shame, because
That's right. It does.
I think it's Brene Brown that talks about shame as kind of like not really knowing what the evolutionary purpose is for it. Like it's kind of like the appendix. We know it served a purpose at one point in time, but no one really knows.
Well, I think shame could, in doses or in big things, still kind of serve a similar function to guilt, right? It
Yeah, I
creates
mean-
pause, it creates social acceptance, it
Yeah, well-
creates an experience of self from a viewpoint of others.
Yeah.
But I think that shame is a lot like certain substances. You just got to be real careful.
Right. And I'm talking about her
dosing.
definition of shame of being
Okay.
that type of shame that's like
I am
I'm the problem, not what I'm doing is the problem. Like I'm defective.
like essentially
Right.
at your core.
Like,
yeah.
and I have some theories on why that is, but I don't. I'm not the researcher here, so.
True.
But I think when it comes to the question of how do we get these to align, to kind of maybe Oscar Wilde, maybe not, and to your point, like you gotta put the brakes on. I said that. Not slam the brakes.
Right.
Tap the brakes.
Tap the brakes.
Slow down. Pause. Look around and start really examining what things are and what they're not. And so that you can, I think that's how we help couples get their values to align just with each other.
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
you're helping a couple, that two people coming into a relationship have
Right.
a little bit different value systems, and they got to be able to align enough to make the relationship work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is more of like a personal journey, though,
Yes.
for self.
Right. And so that's kind of why today isn't about like, here are 3 things to do, right? And Instead, it's like, yeah, here.
Okay, to put you on the spot as we
Uh-oh.
go,
Okay,
I saw
as
your
we
eyes.
go.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
Josh.
boy.
How would you define lust, just after talking about all this? Like,
Oh gosh. I
See?
don't know if I can put it on the spot. I still think there's a part of it that's normal. And by normal, I don't mean norm in okay or bad. I just mean within norms, right? Typical. And I think that less can be, dangerous.
okay. So
Right.
are we gonna let's do it together? Are you and I gonna let it be? Are we gonna let shame stay in there? Because it does feel like, I don't know, like
Like it's part of it.
it's not. I wouldn't. If I'm defining lust and sexual desire, I'm probably saying it's more of a shameful feeling than it is a productive feeling. I'm not crazy about the term, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't have a place. I'm just like I think maybe it's anecdotal. Like we experience so many people come in with
Yeah.
these, extreme and shame-ridden
Yes.
feelings about sex and sexuality, um, and they're using the word lust a lot. So
They
and
do.
that might be it. I mean,
Maybe
I'm
it's
not
from sitting with people that say
right.
so much about lusting after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we can work it out.
We have to.
We can work it out
Right.
later. We'll get our definition down.
There we go. We'll
All
come
right.
up with one.
Well, I hope it was a helpful episode. Did you have more to say? Oh, you have
No.
more to say?
No, I got to think about it. No, I don't. Thank you. I'm going to ask you next
Carrie
time.
wants 30 more minutes. Well, we appreciate everybody that has tuned in and has supported our podcast and our channel. Again, just remind everybody to go hit the subscribe button and the alert bell so you can be notified when more videos and live broadcasts are posted. And head on over to the podcast platforms and make sure you're following us there. So thanks for being here.